Hi guys, so this is Anski. Today this is our first session in learning how to effectively do Java programming. So today we're going to be covering something very interesting, and this from moving now onwards, this is going to help us lots because till now we've been effectively learning how to code effectively in just one script, so in the main. Today we'll start learning about classes, okay, and we're gonna learn also about methods. So what we will start doing is we will start splitting our code. Our main is gonna now become one of the smallest effectively class. So this is gonna be just very few lines. We'll effectively just start the project. So if you remember on our first session, I've mentioned to you, this is important because in the future, we will not be using the main method so much. The main method will be just kind of like a starter for us. And this is effectively what our aim is gonna be over the next few upcoming weeks. So from now on, you'll see me starting to create new scripts, which is effectively new classes. And as I'm gonna be starting those classes, we're gonna be implementing some piece of code there and then taking it back onto our main or anywhere else. And today we're gonna start fairly easy, and we're gonna effectively just include very few classes. We'll still be coding a lot in main. But as we're gonna be progressing for the next upcoming weeks, you're gonna see me that I'm gonna be using less and less and less the main method, to the point where main method might just have 1 or 2 lines only and nothing else. Okay? And this might sound very weird, but this is a good coding. Now, let's quickly talk about what classes are and what the methods are. So classes are effectively, I like to call them a piece of paper. Okay, so, and this will explain reason why in just a second. Or actually book is better explanation of that. So imagine you take a book. This would be effectively your class. You can have multiple books. Okay, so imagine we create a finance app, right? Just anything about finance or medicine, whichever you prefer. You have thousands different diseases, or thousands different accounts, or maybe like bank accounts, or maybe thousands different strategies, investment strategies, right? So we will take many books. Those are called scripts. And for example, if you create your own strategy, so your own program in this case, you would effectively take multiple books that will effectively help you to learn about different ways how people design something. They design their different programs or whatever, and we would effectively just kind of design one. This is not the best explanation kind of when it comes to books on this part, but imagine right now that those books could be written by someone else from your team, or even outside, or you yourself. Okay, so that's kind of one of the very important things to understand. Now, methods would be like each page in the book. Okay, so methods effectively, one book can store one method, so one page only, very short book, or you can have hundreds of different pages in there, and each page does do something different. Maybe, for example, cooking book. Think about this, right? So we can have a cooking book that has 20 different recipes, maybe 10 recipes, and just all the 10 just saying introduction and thank you or whatever. And then you can have a recipe book that has 300 or 600 pages, right? But then you can have multiple volumes as well of that book. So we can have 15 or 20 different recipes books as well. So this is kind of one of the things that we're gonna be taking a look at. Now, let's kind of cover a bit more in depth what are the methods and what can they take. So methods effectively are a set of instructions that program is supposed to do. So wherever we are in the program, so imagine we're saying hello world, I create a variable A, I create a variable B, and then I call my method. So what program will do is we'll stop at that point on this script. You will look for that method where we told it it's going to be. It finds it, it does everything that it's supposed to do in this method, and then jumps back right into our program, the script, and continues from there again. Now, this is a cool thing. Reason for that is because we can have a method calling method. So we can adapt that we are in our main script, and then we're calling a method that will run here, run few programs, then call another method then finish everything there, jump back here to our first method, finish whatever needs to finish, and jump back into our main program and continue to there. So this is a very cool thing that we can do with methods. Another thing as well is the kind of important question, why would we use methods, is because we can reuse them, right? It allows us to stop repeating the code. Imagine I want to say I'm working or I'm creating the app for McDonald's or any other restaurants, and we have always a client coming in and we always want to say good morning and then put the name of the client. Now imagine we have 10 different customers and now they have 10 different names. What I would have to do is I would have to create, for example, same line saying good morning, comma, and then just put the name, right? But what I can do is I can put that good morning message into the method and then just pass the name. And that method would just effectively say good morning, this name, good morning, this name. Now, effectively, if you think about it, a very broad overview, it might not really help us because we still have to code the method. But what if we have 100 names and we have a list of names, right? So list can cover just effectively one line, and the second line could effectively code the method that runs through every single name in the list and calls this. And at this point, having 100 different calls to the method or hundreds different greetings, we short it down to just 2 or 3 lines, okay? So that's kind of the important reason why we would use methods in classes. We will touch upon objects a bit, probably maybe not the next session, but maybe next 2 or 3 sessions. The reason for that is because objects are kind of an important thing, and I want to use them as an introduction to the way how we're supposed to write the code using OOP and solid principles. OOP effectively just stands for object-oriented programming, and it effectively just means that we write our code as objects and how do we interact with them. And solid principles are effectively the way how our code should look like, and this is one of the two things actually are very important when it comes to coding, but they are a bit more advanced. And firstly, we need to cover arithmetics and being able to do mathematical functions and many different things in Java. So the next one we'll actually start covering mathematics and how we can add numbers and stuff. You might have seen some already or have some knowledge about those, but we'll take more in-depth look at by actually creating methods, new methods, or maybe even classes that will help us to do this. So without further ado, let's just jump into the IDE and let's start creating some methods and classes, shall we?
All right, so we are in our IDE, and now we are going to start covering effectively classes and methods. So let me firstly remove all of this. This was just our solution for our string session. I'm just gonna create one string for just a second. So for example, I could say name, and let's just put Alex, why not? For a simple reason that I kind of want to show you now what are the methods. Okay, so firstly, we're gonna talk about classes. So classes is this. It always starts with public, which effectively means that everything can see it. So we have 2 keywords effectively in Java. We have public and we also have private. Private and public, what does this mean? So public, it means it can be seen. So other scripts can see class main everywhere, okay? Private, it means that it cannot be seen. So if we have a private method, for example, inside the class, only this class can see it. This will make more sense in just a few minutes because we're gonna create the class and you're gonna be able to see it. But for now, just understand that it cannot be seen by anything else except parent class. Okay? Then we have class. It just effectively just means it's a script. There's a multiple different ones which we'll probably cover a bit in the future. And then we have a name of our class. Our class should always be capital letters. So as you can see on the left side, we have main. They should also be equal. So they should always be the same. Because if I, for example, type over here the mains, you would start getting confused. In Java, you cannot have them two differently. So the script file, so the file name should be exactly the same as our class name inside. Okay, so this is effectively a class. It's effectively, just imagine this as a book. Okay, if I delete this for now, this is, whoops, just a sec. This is a book. So now this is just an empty book. It has no pages. We can add as many pages as we like, which means we just can add as methods as we like. So if I run this, for example, this is our first page. It's a static void main. Now this effectively is a method. So public, it means it can be seen anywhere. Static, it can be used. We're gonna talk more into about the keywords of static in the future a bit. I don't want to go into detail right now because it's a bit kind of a bit complex. Then we have a return type. We'll cover it soon as well. It's called void. And then we have the name of our method, so main. And then we have something called parameters, which we'll also discuss in just a minute. And this effectively is our book. This is our page, sorry. So what happens in there? We have open brackets and close brackets, curly brackets at each time. So classes have always starts with curly brackets and then always have to end. So this represents first page. I need to comment it out. First page, and this represents last page. In this case, maybe this could be a chapter instead. So first page of the chapter, and this is the last page of the chapter. Or this could effectively just represent beginning of the page, what's written, and end of the page, whichever you want, however you want to see it. But it just effectively means that after this one, this method is done. Let's create another method. Why not? So first you're going to make it public, whichever you want, and then we're going to create void. And then we will say, for example, grid color. Okay. And then we're just gonna say south hello world. Our known pretty much every single code language that you're gonna be learning for the first time. The first we're gonna always be learning how to type hello world. So now, if I'm gonna run this program, nothing is gonna happen. Okay, so because there's no way for us to code this. This doesn't get automatically code, so it doesn't get run. Only main method gets run. That's it. Always in any program that you're gonna write, only main method will be run for the first time. That's it. Nothing else will get run. So how do we code this? Very simple. We just type the name of our color, our method, which is just grid color. That's all. Now we're gonna have to type static over here. That's fine. Once we're gonna run this, what's going to happen is it's just gonna give us grid color. So this. Okay, so everything works fine. Okay, now one of the reasons why do we use a word static is because we need to understand that this one is supposed to call this method without having to create the object. We'll touch more about objects soon after the arithmetics. So as you remember though, we were writing, for example, string over here. We are creating the object of a type of a string. So for example, if this would not be static, we would actually have to create, for example, main like this. Then for example, name2 is equal to new main. And then we could type name2 grid color like this. Okay, this effectively means is that we are creating object of this class, so of the class main, and we call it name2. And this is just new main, it just means that it creates the object. But like I said, we're gonna be covering objects more in details a bit later, and then it allows us to use those methods. This only thing it means static and non-static. Non-static, it just means that we have to create this. We have to write like this in order to access the grid color. This could be any other script. Any other script. Okay, so this could be if we create any other script, so any other class, it would be effectively called like this as well. And then we would be able to access it. But if we want to access it without having to write this line, this is as much for you need to know. We just have to write static. Okay, we'll kind of go more into detail in the future. But for now, let's just leave it like this to the grid color. Perfect. Okay. So this is effectively what our method does. Now, there's a couple of the things that we need to understand. Let's talk firstly about our parameters. Parameters are effectively over here in the brackets when we create a method. So let's say, let's create a new one. So public static void, and let's say, actually, you know what? Let's just change this instead. I think it's going to be better. Over here, we have grid color, but color, which color, right? We would like to pass some kind of name. So firstly, what we have to do is kind of the same thing as done in the past. We have to firstly create what data type are we going to be using. So for example, string, which was going to pass the name, and we're going to pass the name over here. Okay. Now, why do we do this? This method has no understanding of what's happening inside this method. So this page does not know what this page contains. They just know that this grid color knows that main exists and main knows that grid color exists. That's all. But they don't know what's inside this. The way that I usually explain it is imagine of your house. Your neighbor knows that your house is opposite of him. So he knows how your house looks like, but he doesn't know what's inside the house unless you invite him in and show him around. Okay, but you could tell him, for example, I have this massive rocket in my house. The neighbor doesn't know whether you have the rocket in real life or you don't. He can just believe you that you have the rocket. So this is what effectively over here is we are telling grid color we have a name to pass. We will give them a name. Okay, so this method just trusts us blindly. It trusts the neighbor blindly, trusts you blindly. Oh, you give me a name. So whatever I'm supposed to do, you give me this name. And we have to give them the name. So in this case, I'll pass our name. Okay, that's what this effectively means right now, is we are calling this method and we are passing a string called Alex in there. This effectively method just doesn't care what this name is. It just cares that whenever I am called, whenever you want me to run, you need to pass me a string with a name. This can be anything. This doesn't actually have to be the name. We could effectively call it a lollipop, right? It doesn't matter, but we effectively pass it. Now, what am I supposed to do? So for example, in this case, we can say welcome and then put comma and then put plus name. Okay, and that's all you're gonna do. So it's gonna just print out hello plus name. Now, as I said, and please do keep this in mind, this name doesn't come from here. It comes whatever is being passed. So it comes from up here. This is the parameter. It uses this. So we could effectively just put a first name over here to make it even more clear. Okay, so we just, whatever this function is, this function, I could actually make 1,000 different spaces like this. This function is just now, which I think is better to look at it right now. We don't know what's happening in the main. We just know that we're going to be passed the first name. And we are just using this. That's all. So if I go back to make it empty space. So now if we're going to code this, we're going to do right now is grid color, and we're going to pass the name. So we're going to pass this one. And it's just gonna say hello, comma, and then Alex in this case. We can change the name to, for example, Rob, and you do the same thing. Hello, Rob. What if we wanna pass the age? So for example, say plus you are, for example, wanna put, let's say you are, and then we just wanna put the age and then put years old. Right, so just using simple concatenation, but we don't know the age. We could create over here the age, so we can create age value and let's say 25. But as you can see, it still will give us the error, right? Because it doesn't work. How do we do this right now? We have to put over here, so as a parameter, we have to pass We have to put comma. So this is how we separate how many parameters we want. You can have as many as you like. And we're going to say that we are going to receive an int and we want to call it, for example, age of person, right? So we can also call it age of person. It can be age, but it just makes it simpler. Now, and this method is completely okay. It's very happy. It's ready to run. But our grid color has a problem. Because if we're going to hover over this mouse, it's going to say that he expected 2 arguments but found 1. Now, this is the fun part. Okay? Those things over here, so those things that are going to be used in the method are called parameters. But the things that we are passing, so over here when we are calling the method, we call them arguments. So now we have to pass second argument. So in this case, our age. And now our method is going to be happy. So once again, whenever we're calling a method, from wherever you want to call it, when you're passing the variables that you want that method to know, we call them arguments. And whenever we are in the method and we're going to be using those over here, those are called parameters. That's all. Okay, so those are kind of just one funny fact to remember about those two. Okay, so now that we know how to use this, let's talk about the return type, and then we're gonna discuss effectively the classes. Okay, so I'm just gonna create once again public static, and now we have a few different types. We can type int, we can type string, we can type void, we can write even boolean, whatever you want. What this means is, what does this method is gonna give us back? Imagine I want to have, is it raining or not today? Okay, so let's just say public static boolean, and you're gonna say, let's call our method, is it raining? So you're gonna, as you can see, we are using camel case, and I'm gonna put no parameters through because we don't want. We're gonna open it, and now there is a very important keyword called return. What this effectively means is when we are calling this method, so in this case grid color, the return value is gonna come back. And this will make more sense in just a second. But we can say return true. It's raining today, right? So now if we're gonna call, is it raining? It's not gonna do anything, okay? Because it will tell the true, but we won't know that this is returning. So, but this is the fun part. We can create a new Boolean variable like this, and is equal, is it raining? So what it's gonna do is gonna create this variable, and whatever the value comes from this method, after calling this method, this variable will have it. So now if I print the actual variable, this is what you're gonna see. It's gonna say it's true. Why is that the case? Because we are creating a variable, we are assigning the value from here, so we are returning true, we can return false, and now we are printing it. So this one stores there. So this, for example, we could create the age over here, the same thing. Public static int, and then let's say return age, no parameters, and then we can, for example, say return 15. Okay, so now, for example, if I to let's comment this one out, let's make some space, let's remove those things for now, we don't need them. If I'm gonna say over here int new age is equal to true, was it return age, like this, that value is gonna be returned as age. Now, what the cool thing is we can now use grid color over here instead, and we can remove this age like this and change this to new age, so our new variable. And now what you can see is we created a variable, we take the assign the value that comes from this method into here, and then when we are calling this grid color method, we are using name and the age that we actually just created using another method. So if I run this, it works perfectly the same way. Okay, so that's a cool thing that we can do, and this is kind of like how we can use methods, and those methods are reusable. Now, this is the kind of important thing. Why do we use those methods? As you can see, those methods are kind of very small, but let's create a big method. Okay, so let's create public static, and now we're going to create void. Void, it means no return, don't return anything. I don't care whether it's a boolean, I don't care whether it's a string, I don't care whether it's int. I just want you to go in that method, run every single line of code that I've written there, and then come back, and that's it. There's nothing else I want you to do. So let's do that. Maybe create welcoming messages. Okay, and let's just pass a name into it. So because when we are welcoming someone, we want to pass their actual name because we want to know who we are welcoming. And now what we're gonna write is maybe hello to the Bank of England, for example. And then we're gonna say, would you like to, or maybe you are, and let's just put name. Maybe you are known as, and then put name, and then we're just gonna put a dot at the end over here. And then we're gonna say, what would you like to do? What would you like to do? As a question mark, okay? Now, at this point, let's just read color. We don't really care about the int age. We can also disable this for now. And what we can do right now is we can just create this, call this method, so create welcoming message, pass the name that we just put, which is Rob, and run this. Now, what's our program gonna do? Let me just go you line by line. Firstly, it runs the it runs the method void main, because main is always run at the beginning. Then you'll create a name called Rob. It's a string. Then we'll create a variable. Is it raining? So you'll go inside of, you will stop over here. You would find this method is it raining. It reads inside return false. So you return over here is equal to false. So it's just the same thing as us writing just false like this. And that's it. Then you will skip this line because it's commented out, skip this line because it's commented out, skip this line, it's commented out, come over here, create welcoming messages. So you find this method, okay, and you'll say, okay, I expect the name. I've been passed the name, perfect. So I'm happy to go along what I'm supposed to do. Firstly, let me print out hello to the Bank of England. Hello, you are known as, and then use the name that we've been passed, and then add dot. What would you like to do? I'm done. So I finished this method, I'm jumping back over here. So if we were to have anything over here, maybe the end, like this is where it's gonna run. Excuse me. So now we have hello to the Bank of England, you're known as Rob, what would you like to do? The end. Okay, so as you can see, the moment when we are writing using this method, our program stopped, it paused, it wasn't running the end. So this is the kind of one thing that I was explaining to you earlier. It jumps between different methods. So it stops the program, it jumps to another method, runs everything it's supposed to run there, and then comes back. Okay, so now you kind of understand when are we using those. So for example, void, boolean, int, you can also use a string. Depends where we want to use them. They can be very small or they can be very big. The methods, that doesn't matter. So have fun, good luck. Hopefully this helped you a lot. Subscribe if you have any questions, do please ask, and I'll see you soon. Thank you guys. Bye bye.